Sometimes you don't even notice it at first. You're talking to people, texting, going out, but something still feels empty, like you're there physically, but not emotionally. And that feeling can be confusing. A lot of people think loneliness means having no one around, but honestly, that's rarely the real reason. Some of the loneliest people have busy social lives. They talk to dozens of people every day, yet they still feel disconnected. Small talk is everywhere. Quick conversations, likes, comments, emojis. But deep conversations, those are rare and without depth. Connection feels shallow. Social media makes it even trickier. You see everyone smiling, traveling, socializing, and your brain quietly compares. It starts thinking, why don't I feel that connected? Sometimes loneliness isn't about others, it's about emotional safety. If you don't feel safe being open, you naturally stay a bit distant. And distance slowly turns into loneliness. And then the overthinking starts. You replay conversations, wonder what you said wrong, question your personality. And that mental loop only deepens the isolation. Life is faster now than ever. People move cities, change jobs, switch circles. Relationships don't always get time to grow. And without time, emotional roots stay shallow. Sometimes you're not lonely, you're just emotionally tired. Too much noise, too many interactions, and your mind quietly asks for space. Here's something people rarely talk about. Connection with others often starts with connection to yourself. If you don't understand your own emotions, connection outside becomes harder. Feeling lonely doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Sometimes it just means you need deeper connection, not more people. And that's a very human need. One of the strangest things about loneliness is that it often shows up when you're actually around people, not when you're alone at home, but when you're out, talking, socializing, doing everything you're supposed to do, and still, something feels missing. A lot of the time, it's not about the number of people around you, it's about how safe you feel being yourself. If you constantly filter what you say, hide what you feel, or try to fit expectations, connection becomes surface level. And surface level connection can look normal from the outside. Conversations happen, plans happen, messages go back and forth. But emotionally, there's distance. Another thing people rarely talk about is emotional timing. Sometimes you're ready to open up, but the other person isn't, or the opposite. And that mismatch quietly creates loneliness. And then there's the modern pace of life. Everything moves fast. People change jobs, cities, circles. Relationships don't always get the time they need to grow deeper. And without time, real closeness struggles to form. So sometimes loneliness isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's simply a sign that the environment around you doesn't fully match what you emotionally need right now. One thing that quietly changed how we experience loneliness is social media, and not in an obvious way. It doesn't isolate us physically. If anything, it connects us constantly. But emotional connection, that's a different story. You see people living their lives in highlight mode, smiles, trips, social gatherings, carefully selected moments, and your brain starts comparing automatically, even if you don't want it to. The tricky part is, comparison doesn't always feel like jealousy. Sometimes it just feels like distance, like everyone else is part of something and you're slightly outside of it. And here's something people rarely realize. Constant digital interaction can actually reduce emotional depth. Quick replies, short messages, lots of contact, but very little presence. Your brain still needs slower connection. Tone of voice, eye contact, silence between words. Those things build emotional safety. Screens don't fully replace that. So sometimes you're not lonely because people aren't there. You're lonely because connection feels thin, fast, fragmented. A lot of interaction, but not enough depth. Another thing that often comes with loneliness is overthinking. Not dramatic overthinking, just quiet mental replay. Conversations, moments, small details, things most people forget quickly. You might start wondering if you said something wrong, if you sounded awkward, if people secretly lost interest. These thoughts don't shout, they just stay in the background. And the tricky part is, overthinking feels like problem solving, like you're trying to understand, improve, adjust. But sometimes it only deepens the distance. When you constantly analyze yourself, you become more cautious, more filtered, less spontaneous. And connection often needs spontaneity. There's also a biological side to this. Loneliness increases stress hormones, and stress makes the brain scan for problems. It's a survival mechanism, but in social situations, it can create unnecessary doubt, so the cycle becomes quiet but powerful. Loneliness leads to overthinking. Overthinking leads to distance. And distance feeds loneliness again. And most of this happens internally. Other people rarely see it, which makes loneliness feel even more private, almost invisible. Something people don't always realize is that loneliness isn't just one feeling. It actually shows up in different forms, and understanding that sometimes makes the feeling less confusing. One common type is social loneliness. That's when you simply don't have enough interaction. Maybe you move to a new city, change jobs, or your social circle slowly faded. It's not dramatic, just quiet distance. Another type is emotional loneliness. And this one can happen even when you're surrounded by people. It's the feeling that nobody really understands you or sees the deeper parts of who you are. Sometimes people in relationships experience this the most. Everything looks fine on the surface. But emotionally, something feels missing. There's also a quieter type, existential loneliness. That subtle feeling that no one can fully experience life exactly the way you do. That doesn't mean isolation. It just means individuality. But sometimes the mind interprets it as separation. And here's the important part. Different types of loneliness need different responses. More people helps social loneliness. Deeper conversations help emotional loneliness. Self-understanding helps existential loneliness. When people don't recognize the type, they often try the wrong solution. Like adding more social activity when what they actually need is emotional closeness. If there's one thing worth remembering about loneliness, it's this. It's a human experience, not a personal failure, not a sign that something is wrong with you. Just a feeling that sometimes appears when connection feels out of balance. And feelings, even uncomfortable ones, usually carry information. They point to needs, to boundaries, to parts of life that might need attention. Sometimes the answer is more connection. Sometimes it's deeper connection. And sometimes it's learning to feel comfortable in your own company first. Because when you understand yourself better, connection with others often becomes easier, less forced, more natural. So, if you've been feeling lonely lately, try not to treat it as an enemy. Treat it as a signal, a quiet invitation to look a little closer at what you might need right now. And remember, loneliness passes, connection can be rebuilt, and you're definitely not the only one who feels this sometimes.